Leeds United have lost another key match in December, and in a month where we could have caught up with an overtaken Ipswich, it is absolutely painful to see us continue to drop points. I'm going to take a little bit of a slightly different look at this match. I'm going to have a bit of a tactical dive into it rather than running through the events bit by bit. That's why it's taken a little bit longer to get the video out. Sorry about that, but I hope you enjoy this anyway. And if you're not yet, please subscribe. It'd be massively appreciated. It lets me do a little bit more of this detailed stuff more often because it means that I'm potentially earning from it and I can focus on it a little bit more. So, first up, you need to know the team news. You don't know if you're going to win a match without knowing who's going to win the match for you, or in this case, lose the match for you. And there were some pretty big changes in the team. Gruev came in for Kamara in midfield. I think this is partially a tactical change, partially a fitness change. I think Gruev brings a little bit more defensively than Kamara does, whilst Kamara's more of a playmaker. I think the idea was we were going to hit them a little bit more on the break than we did. Ended up not happening, but it's fine enough, and it also shows the importance of Ethan Ampadu in this system. Fact is, he had played every single minute of the season so far, apart from a couple when he'd been subbed off. Those don't really count as rests either, so you can tell that he is a key part of the way that Daniel Farke wants to play. In addition to that, Archie Gray was benched for Sam Byram, with Spence going to right back, Byram to left back. Now we've mostly got the idea of square pegs, square holes. Byram isn't straight up a left back. We still definitely need one in January, but this is a time where we can say everyone is where they're meant to be on the pitch. In addition to that, Willie Nonto's come in for Dan James. I'll get into that one in a little bit of a minute. Liam Cooper has replaced Pascal Stroke, who has an adductor injury. I don't think this is the worst of changes. It's one that needed to be made, and Cooper isn't necessarily to blame for the goal, so I've not got a problem with this. And obviously, Caldalo came in for the suspended Elan Meslier. Now, by this point already, I think we've made some potentially wrong decisions. So, I'm going to pull up the tactics board if I can bring up the right thing. There we go. This is roughly the way that we want to play. Invite teams onto us, and then once we get the ball, this is the ball, fuck it. Goes to Ampadu, and then we have the likes of Ruter, Piru, Somerville, and Nonto all outpacing their respective defenders because there's not many centre-backs or right-backs that you would rate over our forward line. Ampadu ball in behind, or Ruter or Piru. Nice little creative football. Ideally, one-on-one chance, slotted in, bosh, Bob's your uncle, Leeds United win. However, I've got a slight issue with the picked team for this because Piru doesn't necessarily have that pace in him. Piru isn't someone that's the fastest on the pitch. From the off, what I've been saying for a few weeks now is I would probably drop Piru, bring on Nonto, and keep James in the side. Because James, as we saw in the second half of this match, has the pace to really make the difference. Meanwhile, that's something that Piru struggles to do. Piru is, once we've got James here, Somerville here, Ruter here, Piru tends to be on the edge of the box, waiting for the cutback, trying to finish it. That's not always going to work, especially when you've got an organisationally strong team like West Brom, who now have 12 clean sheets in the Championship this season, that we're trying to break down. That's not always going to work. So, aside from that, I'm going to have a very quick dive through the first half, because in theory, we do have the players on the pitch at this stage that can win us the game. Just going to rearrange them on the board. First half, I missed a few minutes of the half. I'm not going to lie to you, but apparently we were quite good. We were on top for a little bit, and at this point I thought there was a good level of energy in the side. You could see that we'd rotated. There wasn't that much tiredness. One of the subs started to scare me, with Darlow being very poor and very risky from a corner that Spence had to block basically on the line. If we would have conceded that, the rest of the match would have been hellish. It would have been the same as if we'd conceded on the 30-something minute as we did for the entirety of the match. Nonto had a penalty shout. The balls behind were clearly working because ball over the top into a pacey player against slow centre-backs is always going to work. He was definitely dragged down by Kipre. It definitely should have been a penalty, and this would have been at 0-0. I don't like to blame the referees in these cases because we weren't good enough. But if we go one goal up, we're not playing against a low block anymore. And immediately after this, West Brom score their goal. That's what makes it so infuriating. The fact that we should have definitely had one penalty for Nonto, potentially two on the Ruter challenge, because I'm not entirely convinced that the defender even got a foot to the ball until after he'd been through Ruter. It's just irritating. So then we got to half-time, and I thought I'd have a quick look at what was going wrong, and we were far from creative enough, and any chances that we were having were being overworked. No one was confident enough to just have a shot, which you need to do sometimes. On the analysis, we could have had two penalties, but we weren't organised enough at the back. West Brom were. We weren't doing anything with our chances. West Brom were. That's the issue. Second half, we started off quite weak, and that is why Daniel Farke looks to make some very, very early changes. And the changes, I think, were another bit of a mistake. So back to the tactics board. Control shift it a couple of times. There we go. Let's not have Lego adverts, Fan-Dabby-Dozy, or the privacy cookie settings. Right, so changes happened. Players coming on. James, down here. Anthony, over here. Bamford, over here. In theory, very good, very attacking stuff. However, in practice, now you've got an overloaded left-hand side, because you've got Somerville and Anthony working together over here. You've got Dan James working on his own, so consistently doubled up on, even though Dan James simultaneously was, I would say, comfortably one of our better players in this half. And you start to see the beginnings of what was a fairly significant issue in the side, which was the fact that the side sort of broke into two separate halves in a weird way. 1 second, I've noticed the connection's gone a bit funny, so I'm going to pause until it fixes it. And the internet has fixed itself. Right, time to get to this little tactical issue. So, what tended to happen was a hell of a lot of the time, I'm just going to find out how to draw a nice curly line here. Will I do it? Absolutely not. Okay. You can tell that I don't use this that often, can't you? No, let's not do that. Let's go to the pen. Fantastic. So, what you've got here is you've got a team where you've got a lot of players looking to attack, looking to get the shot off, and you've got a bunch of players looking to create the chances. What we tend to do is we tend to play the ball between the centre-backs, which is fine to try and create opportunities, and then cycle it out to the wings. And if that doesn't work, go back to the centre-backs and cycle it back out to the wings. The issue that we've got at this point is with James and Anthony functionally being wing-backs. Yes, we're overloading them here with Anthony and Somerville. And yes, Dan James made a significant difference. He made chance after chance after chance because he was brave enough to put in the crosses. But I think this absolutely highlighted our desperate need to sign a number 10. Because you've got this little cycle of football here, that's all well and good. But at the same time, you've got a batch of players in here that the only way they are getting the ball because they are surrounded by West Brom defenders is with a cross-in from the likes of Dan James into the box, or Somerville into the box, or on a very rare occasion, you'd get something like Gruev would come out, try and pick up the ball and try and play through the line of defenders, but Gruev isn't a 10. Rutter would do the same. He would come back, try and collect the ball, try and play through the defenders, but Rutter isn't a 10. At least not in the passing sense, and that's what we desperately needed in this match. And we just sort of ended up with these two sort of disparate sections of the side, which got even worse when we're over to one side of the pitch, because when the ball is with Anthony and Somerville, James is going to come inside to wait for the cross, and Rodon is going to push up. And then you've just got this batch, trying to play the ball into 5 players in the box that are surrounded because they're playing in 2 banks of 10. And this is why I think Piru again starts to feel invisible. Because throughout the first half, he didn't necessarily have the pace to play with the counter. And throughout the second half, he's part of this massive batch of players, I've for some reason moved the circle, that isn't playing with the ball. And that's why I feel like Piru isn't set to start in these low block games. And even on the counter, I don't know if he's got the pace at the moment, because against an organised defence, he's not picking up those late balls on the counter-attack. That's why I feel like even potentially Bamford would potentially be a better shout in these matches, because it lets Rutter play that straight-up 10 thing. Because he can play those clever passes and he can dribble intelligently, but at the same time he's made to play in this 4-2-4 where he's also a 9. If you solidly say, Rutter, you can drop in here, and if the issue is pressing, just put Bamford on the pitch. I feel like that just makes a little bit more sense because Bamford does that more comfortably. And then we made another batch of changes, which was take off Somerville, which still leaves that little overload on the left-hand side, and take off Ampadu for Mateo Joseph. Mateo Joseph, who is a striker, which just means instead of 3 strikers in this area, and Gruev potentially coming up to join them, 4 strikers in the area, Gruev coming up to join them, with Anthony and Firpo cutting inside whenever there's a cross, with James cutting inside whenever there's a cross. I've just realised I've accidentally removed the thing. Let's fix that. There we go. That one. But yeah, we've brought on Mateo Joseph, who is just overloading this area even more. If the idea is to whip in crosses and get ahead on it, it's not working, because that's not what we do for the rest of football matches, so we're not used to that just bang a ball in and hope. We've not got the traditional winger, aside from Dan James, and that's why all the chances came from him. Because that's what he does. He goes to the byline, he puts in a cross, and aside from those crosses and occasionally a Rutter or a Gruev dropping out, trying to pick up the ball to desperately make something happen, there's absolutely nothing connecting the 2 walls of players. That's why we're not able to create chances. And when West Brom are just sitting in like this, in a very deep structure that just prevents us from getting chances, There's nothing that we can do. And then it was full time and we were 1-0 down. And there are very clearly a hell of a lot of lessons that we need to learn from this match. First up is that desperate need for a connective tissue. This match told me that maybe we'll be okay without a left back. Byram can do a job. Firpo could do a job. I'd like a dedicated one in January. That is an absolute must in my opinion. But even more pivotal is getting a number 10 that can connect those lines. Because when we play against that low block, we don't have a playmaker to break it down. Pablo Hernandez could do it. In theory, Saiz could do it. I didn't watch that much of him because he was having a hissy fit with Bielsa when I mainly started watching Leeds again. But we don't have it at the minute. In theory, Rafinha could have done it. Currently, Ruter, I guess, can do it, but that compact area isn't what he's good at. He's good at the transitional stuff, picking up the ball, turning and dribbling into the space behind the man. But if they're sat deep, there isn't space behind the man. What our biggest problem is the ability to break down that low block, and that means a creative midfielder. I don't know if in this match it would have been more intelligent to bring on Kamara over Patrick Bamford, because Kamara is a little bit playmaky. I don't know if it would have potentially been a better idea to bring on Gray, because Gray, at least at 21's level, was a really strong playmaker, and I know that's not senior football, but he's adapted quite well to everything he's done so far. But ultimately, I feel like if we don't remedy this, scorelines like this, where a team is able to get a goal and just sit back and wait for us to not be able to score, losing 1-0 will continue to happen. And we won't get automatically promoted, and teams will learn by the time it's the playoffs. And as much as we play well against the teams that come at us, if West Brom are smart enough to learn to not do that, when it comes to playoffs, Ipswich or Southampton or whoever the hell else makes it, Blackburn, will be smart enough to not do that. That video was less fun than I hoped for, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Comment down below what you think, because I think it's really interesting having these little tactical dives. Yeah, subscribe if you enjoyed. If you're not yet, as I mentioned, I'm really trying to push this channel forwards. It'd be massively appreciated if you could join me on the journey. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you later. Please let us win in the next match.